Guess who's back to haunt your dreams just in time for Halloween, which is by far my favourite time of the year. I don't care for my birthday. I don't care for Christmas. Jesus can keep his eggs. Halloween, it's my time of the year. It's when I come out to play. And luckily, earlier this year, I watched 31 horror films in a month. And I must have had some damn good foresight because now I'm doing a video about my top 10 horror films out of the 31 that I watched. There's also a couple, I think 3 honourable mentions because you know me. If you know me, you know me. I can talk and talk about everything that I love and dislove for quite a while. But I tried to restrict it down to 10 because if I were to talk about all 31, my god, that would be long. And this video is probably already going to be long. This intro is already long. So I don't want to subject you to spending longer with me than you already have to or choose to. I'm also thinking that if you're stuck for something to watch this Halloween and you trust my opinion, then here is the video for you. What to watch this Halloween? Let's watch that thing that Vicky recommended in their video after they watched it in July and or August. And if you can't already tell, I have once again dressed for the occasion. We got a jack-o'-lantern t-shirt, we got my favourite necklace, a choker, a bracelet, a 95p ghost and bat thing from Tesco. And I've also done some set decorating this time. I've never seen a Terrifier film, just going to throw that up. I've never seen a Terrifier film, but what I'm about to show you came free in a magazine that I got. Clown warning, by the way, if you're terrified of clowns, you're not going to like that. I've also got a skeleton, he's called Skelly Bob, and a purple ghost candle. They are called Spooky Sue. So yeah, we've got Art the Clown, Skelly Bob, Spooky Sue, and this freak, this absolute nutcase, this weird motherfucker that should be confined to a mental asylum and possibly given a lobotomy. If you can't tell, that's me. On with the video. Let's go. I have the handy dandy list on my handy dandy phone. And to begin with, I want to get some honourable mentions out of the way. And my first one might break the heart of one of my friends. Shannon, if you're watching, I am deeply sorry for what I'm about to say. I didn't watch this film as part of the 31-day marathon thing, but there is a film that came out recently called Starvaker, starring Matt Smith. I wonder why I watched that film. And it is labelled as a British folk horror, and I don't really watch folk horror movies. But in my 31 days, I did watch Midsommar for the first time, thanks to Shannon's encouragement. And it didn't get me like it did other people, including my friend. So I'm sorry for not liking Midsommar or praising it to be the masterpiece that it inevitably is. I just didn't understand it. But I would rather watch Starvaker over Midsommar, not just because Matt Smith is in it, not just because Erin Richards from Gotham is in it, and not just because Matt Smith sings at the end of it. Both of them are folk horror. I just prefer Starvaker to Midsommar. The only good thing Midsommar has going for it is Florence Pugh. I'm a girl who likes girls. What the fuck do you expect me to say? Florence Pugh is hot shit. God, did I just objectify Florence Pugh? Anyway, moving on. My second honourable mention is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which celebrates 50 years of release this year. We have had 50 years of a guy in a mask made of human skin chasing people with a chainsaw. Iconic. I watched that for the first time in the 31 days that I was watching horror films. The only thing that I really took away from it was an existential crisis over eating meat, to the point that I went to my friend, who doesn't eat meat, I also don't eat meat, and I said to her, back in the caveman days, if we didn't eat meat, would we have survived to the point that we are now? And what ensued was about a 15-minute discussion about that topic. Oh, and I also had like a crisis over representation of disabled people in the film, and I think something else. I can't remember what, but basically the film gave me more crises than good points to take away from it. Maybe one day in the future I can do like a 10-minute video on my reaction to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So that's honourable mention number 2. Honourable mention number 3, American Psycho. I'm not going to go into why I love American Psycho here and now, because I could do a whole half an hour video on that, which I intend to do at some point in the future. But if you were to come to me and say, Vicky, what do you think is a 5 out of 5 movie, a 10 out of 10 movie, a perfect movie with absolutely no flaws? There is a high chance that I will turn around to you and go, American Psycho, because I think it is damn beautiful and hilarious and a great commentary on things, and I just love American Psycho. I want to be Patrick Bateman. Those are my 3 honourable mentions, 2 of which might get spin-off videos, so that's fun. Hello. Hello, Art the Clown. How are you doing, baby? Okay, so now to get into the proper flesh and blood of this video. As I say, I watched 31 horror movies in a month, and I have made a list, in no particular order, as to what the 10 that stood out the most to me were. And I'm going to tell you why I like them, and if that sounds like your kind of thing, go and watch them. There will be minor spoilers, possibly big spoilers. I will try and talk around the spoilers as much as possible, but I hope that if you get anything from watching this video, it's a Halloween film to watch in the month of Halloween, because that's what I was made for. Go and tell Billie Eilish I know what I was made for. Okay, so the first one is called Men, and I remember seeing this film advertised at the cinema, and then the next day I went to my friend's to get my hair dyed, I think, and I said to her, hey, there's a film called Men currently showing in the cinema, and I really hope that this film is about toxic men and how men can be inappropriate towards women. I think there's a word better than inappropriate, but like very full on and intense towards women, and I really hope that the film is about that. And the film is kind of about that. I mean, there's a main woman who encounters loads of different men played by the same man, which is very interesting. But the film, to me, and I think researching it, is also about grief, and like the idea of grief just being something that lives with you, and it constantly rebirths itself, and you have to try and deal with all of these different rebirthed versions of the same kind of grief that you've now suddenly got to deal with. I think Men is also a folk horror, because it's set in like a cottage in a village surrounded by fields, and that seems pretty folky to me. But the reason why Men is in fact at the top of this list, I don't know if it would be now, but it was at the top of the list, and is currently at the top of the list. And the reason for that is because when I was watching it, I was just thinking to myself that if I could make a horror movie, this is what I would want it to look like. I was sat watching it with my mouth agape, completely invested, confused, perplexed with all the imagery, trying to decipher what the hell is going on, but having an absolutely incredible time while feeling intense jealousy. Because like I say, if I could make a horror movie, it would probably be along the lines of men in the what the fuck scale, and trying to figure out what's going on through the way that people have decided to depict the subject matter. Does that make any sense? I don't know if that makes any sense. I just kind of rabbit on in these videos and hope somebody goes, yeah, like that. I also think there was a bit of controversy around the fact that it was a man making this film trying to speak on women's issues. If that's something that you're interested in giving your opinion on, go watch it and then comment on this video. I'd love to know people's opinions of my recommendations. What you think of it if you've seen it, what you think of it after you've seen it. Okay, so the second film is As Above, So Below, which is about a British woman that goes in search of the Philosopher's Stone in the French catacombs that are littered with bones of dead people. If that isn't a hook for a movie that you should go and watch, I don't know what is. And I really wanted to watch this film because when I was 17, I found out about a cinema that had been set up in the Paris catacombs by someone. To this day, I don't think anyone knows who actually did it, But I just loved this idea of a cinema set up in catacombs surrounded by bones of dead people. Nobody knows who did it, and I recorded a song about it. It's called Don't Come Looking for Us, and it's not currently out, but like in 5 years when I decide to refinish and re-release it, you will hopefully remember it's inspired by the Paris catacombs, which you found out in this video right here. So Don't Come Looking for Us, coming 2029, I guess. It's a pretty interesting premise to begin with, and watching it felt like a Tomb Raider film on steroids, because I'm somebody that's pretty... horror is kind of washed out to me. I can watch a horror film and not really give a toss. There are horror films on this list coming up that you will probably have what the fuck reactions to my own reaction. So when I tell you that I almost turned this film off because of how intense it is, that should say something. And the reason why I watch so many horror films in a month is because I tried to find ones that were genuinely scary to me, because I don't think a lot scares me, especially with horror films. Horror films are like a comfort to me. Again, I should be institutionalized. But As Above, So Below was the first one that made me want to turn the telly off. I didn't, because I'm not a pussy. But oh my god, definitely recommend this film. I'm a horror fan, but I hate jump scares, but I still carried on watching. So I guess if you do go and watch this film and you do end up turning it off, I'm better than you. The next film on this list is one that also scared me to death, but I bought the book of it, so that should say something. The book is, and the film is, The Ring. And I think The Ring is one of those horror films that you just hear of when you're getting into horror, like Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween. Is just one of those ones that has apparently had such a lasting effect on the horror community and horror consciousness that you hear about it, and then there comes a time in your life where you go to watch it, and oh my god, the film is very interesting, and for the entire time I was hooked, trying to figure out what the hell was going on, what the story was about. Obviously I knew about the creepy girl with long black hair that climbs out of the TV. That's fine, that's fun, that's interesting. What I didn't account for was the fact that after said girl climbs out of the TV, she kills people, given it's a horror film. But the way that their corpses look, about 10 minutes into the film, the first victim of the TV girl is shown, and I can still see it in my fucking eyes. I did not like that. I did not like that one bit. And when her corpse was shown on screen, it was also paired with this like metallic jump scary sound design sting, and it was so unsettling, disturbing, gross, did I say upsetting? I don't fucking know. That whenever I thought somebody was going to die to this TV girl again, I would watch the film through my phone like this. So I'd be on my phone, scrolling on Twitter, talking to my niece on Snapchat, and the film was just playing in the background and I was paying attention via listening to it. So for the entire film, I was in a state of pure dread, terror, and anxiety. But I also got the book because I'm one of those stupid, nerdy people that will watch a film and then read the book and compare it and see what the different versions are like. I also don't think it helped the fact that I was watching this film in 720p and it was filmed in like 2002. That's when it came out, I think. So there's this really like low quality, grainy footage vibe to it, in addition to the colour grading, which I loved, in addition to the way that the corpses looked, which was terrifying. So, The Ring, go and watch it. I also think it's worth saying that I think that the Japanese are like masters of horror. Resident Evil, Silent Hill, The Ring, and... Sorry, I'm having to check my letterboxd for this next bit. If you want to hear my thoughts on all of these films, go to my letterboxd, because I reviewed them as I went through them. The Grudge. So Resident Evil, The Ring, The Grudge, and Silent Hill are like some of the best horror, some of the most interesting horror that I've ever seen. Obviously, I don't speak Japanese, so I've only indulged myself in the English version. Call me a fake fan if you want, but I don't really want the Duolingo bird coming for what's left of my family. Now that would make an interesting horror film. I'm copywriting that idea right here, right now. Enough with the terror. Let's go for something fun that will expose the freak and weirdo that I really am. Evil Dead 2013. There's a drug addict that goes into a cabin in the middle of the woods with some friends who are trying to help her get better. One of those friends is played by a woman who plays Tabitha in Gotham. So they're doing their absolute best to help get their friend off of being a drug addict. And it doesn't go too well because they end up, I guess, awakening an evil spirit that possesses people and kills them off one by one. And I think I'm right in saying that if they kill enough people, then the heavens open and blood rains down upon everyone and everything, and the evil dead rise. You can probably guess how the film goes. They're all picked off one by one in severely interesting and gory ways. Everyone is always like, oh my god, I don't like gory films, and I didn't really know what gory was until I watched Evil Dead 2013. And I think it's the sheer amount of blood and dismemberment that occurs in the film that people would label as gory. So that's fun, but I don't really get freaked out by gory things, as I found out. In fact, Evil Dead 2013 was one of my favourites and most enjoyed films on this list. And I want to highlight one scene specifically, which I thought was incredibly fucking hot. Not only do I like hot girls being covered in blood, because that makes them even hotter, but the possessed girl is in a basement, and one of the other people staying at this cabin somehow gets lured down into the basement, and there is this very homoerotic scene where I was like, oh my god, are they going to kiss? Are they going to snog? Are they going to fuck? So the possessed girl at some point takes a knife and cuts her tongue in half. And I was just like, the tongue being cut with the possessed girl, who has some incredibly great one-liners, by the way, mixed with this sexual lesbian tension. It is like perfection for me. Again, when I was 17, I wrote a song called Dead Aesthetics. And part of the song goes, don't ask me why my aesthetic is red. Maybe it's because my kink is death. I was just trying to be edgy when I was 17, when I wrote that song. Then, when I was 24, I watched Evil Dead 2013. I watched that scene and I was like, it all makes sense now. I wrote this song about Evil Dead. I didn't, but like, I told you I have incredible foresight, I think. It's honestly been ages since I watched that film, so I can't remember just how gay it gets, but just the vibes, man. Just the vibes and the blood and the dismemberment. 10 out of 10 for hot girl covered in blood. Sticking with the theme of that, let's talk about Bride of Chucky. I can't fucking take Bride of Chucky seriously. It is so entertaining and comedic, and I felt bad laughing at the film while I was watching it, to the point that after the film finished, I googled it to find out that it is a black comedy, and I felt a little better. But I cannot take Bride of Chucky seriously. It is a film about a murderer who is in the body of a doll, and there's a girl who has a crush on him and puts her consciousness in a doll, and then they go on a murdering rampage. There's also a gay person in the film. I thought that the film was pretty fucking representative. There's a lot of good representation in it, despite being released in the late 90s, the turn of the 2000s. If that film came out now, people would probably be calling it woke, which is good, because the woker the better. I laughed my way through that fucking film. I couldn't take it seriously. Also, Rob Zombie's song, I think it's Evil Dead Girl, plays right at the start when Jennifer Tilly, as Tiffany, has just killed a cop. Fucking slay. Queen. Mother. And I thought to myself, this is perfect. The Evil Dead Girl is playing over her. Bride of Chucky, fucking ridiculous. Entertaining. Representation. I still don't know what word should go there. Oh, and I think it's also worth mentioning that when I was about 10 years old, I was staying at my sister's and this film was on. And for 14 years of my life, all I could remember was this massacred toy doll putting a piece of cloth in a police car and setting said cloth alight to the point that the police car exploded. And I think that might have been a defining childhood moment for who and what I've turned out to be. When I rewatched this film earlier this year, I was like, yeah, this makes so much fucking sense. Chucky turned me gay. I can say that. I say that about literally everything that I watch that has the minutest amount of gay people in it. Anyway, Bride of Chucky, go watch it if you fancy a laugh. Next one, Final Destination 3. It's very, you don't have to think too hard about this. If you want like a comfort horror film, I recommend Final Destination 3. It's literally just people getting decapitated, and the story behind it is that they escape death. So death is hunting them down to kill them in the order that they should have died. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I think that's her name, is in this film. The reason why I watched this is because she's in it, and I know her from stuff like Birds of Prey, and she's married to Obi-Wan Kenobi, I think. And years ago on Twitter, I saw a film from this scene where two girls go to a tanning salon together, and it's their time to die, and the tanning beds burst out into flames, and they can't escape it. And then on screen, there's these two tanning beds. Imagine these are the tanning beds, just roaring with flames. And then it cuts to two coffins side by side. And I looked at that video on Twitter and I went, that is cinema. Then I ended up watching the film because it came on Netflix. And it came on Netflix at the right time because I was like mid horror movie binge. So if you want to see people meet their maker in incredibly interesting, convoluted and hilarious ways, then go and watch Final Destination 3, because at least one scene in it is the definition of cinema. Not even Quentin Tarantino or Stanley Kubrick could make anything as good as that scene. Bold claim, I know, but fuck film bros. Next on the list is the Blair Witch Project from 1999, I do believe, which is like the mother of found footage horror films. And I watched that for the first time the same day that I watched Longlegs, which came out this year. And honestly, I was more petrified of the Blair Witch Project because watching that, I discovered that films where you can't see the evil and you don't really know what's going on and everything is implied and it's more mental and psychological is way more terrifying than seeing the evil. There were a couple of moments in Blair Witch that did feel a bit boring. Like, it feels like a documentary, and the people making it are constantly getting lost, but every now and again there's a moment that's a bit scary, a bit spooky, a bit like something is attacking them, but you don't know what, so your mind starts doing mental gymnastics to try and figure out what it is. And then there's the ending, which is very confusing, but I think is also a callback to something earlier in the film. But it's just the fact that Longlegs was labelled as like the scariest movie of the decade, of the year. I went to see it, then I watched The Blair Witch Project, and I was scared more by a film from the 1990s than I was a film from this year that was labelled and marketed as such a scary film. The old ones are the best ones, as your grandparents would probably say. And whilst we're on the topic of it, let's talk about Longlegs, the inspiration behind this whole venture that I went on, because Whenever I go to the cinema, there's a 90% chance is to see a horror film. And the last time I went to the cinema was to see Longlegs because everyone was banging on about it. And the people on TikTok that got paid to promote it done their job. They earned their £10 to promote it because I went to see it. I knew nothing about it except Nicolas Cage was in it and it was being labelled as something so terrifyingly scary. But in prep for seeing another horror film, I decided to watch a horror film every night until I went to see Longlegs. Then I was having so much fun that I decided to watch as many horror films in a month as I could, which ended up in me watching 31 horror films in a month. Go to my Letterboxd to see the full list of them, because this is just a few of what I watched. The ones that I like the most. Longlegs isn't scary. It's kind of like Silence of the Lambs. Lots of people were saying it's like the new age Silence of the Lambs. And it's like that, but then every now and again you get clips of Longlegs, Nicolas Cage himself, trying to be creepy, but I just think he's hilarious. He bursts out screaming, he sings a bit, tries to be creepy, but I just look at him thinking, God, you're so hot. Right. Do not put a blonde, androgynous person in my face in a horror film, because they will become everything that I want to be. And I will be more invested in them than the movie. Like, Longlegs is great, it's good. I've watched it 3 times this year, and I want to watch it again with my niece who loves horror films just to see what she makes of it. But I have to admit that every time that I watched it, I was more excited about seeing Longlegs himself than the rest of the film. I just love Daddy Longlegs. There are other parts of the film that I like trying to find all the Easter eggs of the devil behind or surrounding Lee, the main character, played by Micah Monroe, who is incredible. And I was very interested by her characterization through the film because it's like, is she possessed? Because it's like the way she's acting, is it because she's possessed? Or is she just severely autistic? Or is she just socially awkward? There are so many things that I could get into about the film. There are probably even more things that the entire internet could get into concerning the film. But I do recommend it. It's not the scariest film you'll ever see. There's hardly any blood in it. But when the blood does start to flow, that's when it really gets interesting. The third act really kicks it into, like, first gear. And I wouldn't say that the first 2 acts are a drag. But you might really like the first 2 acts. Once the blood starts flowing, and once Daddy Longlegs shows his face, it's all over. And I am there, glued to the screen. But I definitely recommend you go and watch it, especially if you like Silence of the Lambs. We've only got 2 more to talk about. One of them is Late Night with the Devil, starring David Dastmalchian. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's been in Gotham. He's been in The Dark Knight. He's been in Suicide Squad, and he was incredible and phenomenal in all of them. And he takes the lead here. And I really like watching American talk shows. Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Conan O'Brien. There's another one that I can't remember, but everybody who's performed on it that I love, the best performances are always on his talk show. And as a Prince fan, I have to mention Arsenio Hall as well. So I like American talk shows, and the way that Late Night with the Devil is formatted is because it's like an American talk show doing a Halloween special where a little girl is possessed live on air, and that's like the main attraction of the show, and it builds up to that. And you have to go through other guests who are like non-believers, and there's conflict between the guests. Every time they go to an ad break in the show, you get this black and white behind the scenes stuff of them checking in, how the night is going. I just thought that the reason why I like it so much is because it feels like such a new, fresh take on horror. And there's nothing, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing like it out there. It's an American talk show merged with a making of documentary, but it's all fake and fabricated to be a horror film. Does that make any sense? And the lead is incredible, David Dasmalchian. The story is very intriguing. There is a twist at the end that I didn't see coming, that I think is like an explanation as to how and why everything that's happened has happened. So let's see if you can figure that out if you go and watch it. But there was also a bit of controversy because the film does use AI art to do the "We'll be right back" title cards for the talk show in the film. And there was a whole debate about that. I think David Dasmalchian kind of defended it. People on YouTube and social media were saying, no, we can't allow AI art. The AI art discussion is another video in and of itself. But I will say this: AI bad, film good. If there's one thing I love to do, it's stir controversy. And the last film on the list is Bodies, 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 which is... You may be surprised by that. Originally, I wasn't going to put it on the list, but I wanted to include films on the list that I really enjoyed, thought were original, or were scared to death of. And I would put Bodies, Bodies, Bodies into the original feeling category a bit. I feel like Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is another one of those horror films that you don't have to think too hard about, but there is a mystery going on. It's like an Agatha Christie novel or film where people are being picked off one by one in a house where the doors are locked, and the only explanation is the people there that are in the house. But it also feels like it's one of those horror movies specifically made for teenagers at sleepovers, much like The Babysitter, which I watched with my other niece when she was 15, I do believe. It very much felt like it's catered towards teenagers, but I watched it because there are people in it that I know and love, and I was like, oh my god, that's that person from that film. I wouldn't say that the answer to the mystery is dreadful. I think even in my Letterboxd review I said I can't be mad at the answer to this mystery because it just felt so... It does feel like a letdown and a disappointment, but at the same time, I didn't see it coming. Like, yeah, it's pathetic, it's stupid. Some people may have thought that it's like the first answer. This answer never crossed my mind. So, as much as it feels like a movie catered towards a teenage sleepover, the end was disappointingly satisfying or satisfyingly disappointing. And there is also a scene in the movie where most of the characters are taking drugs and dancing to 212 by Azalea Banks. And I just looked at that scene and I was like, God, I wish that is the life that I was living right now. Because I love that scene. It's probably my favourite scene in the film. Oh, it's also, the film's also a bit gay. So if you think that queer representation is woke, don't watch this film. But if you're okay with all of that and want something mildly entertaining, mildly disappointing, incredibly interesting, and very low effort to watch and relax to... Sorry, my camera just cut off. Sorry, my camera just cut off while I was in the middle of my wrap up on Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Go and watch it if you want something low effort and mildly entertaining that's a bit queer. That is a very long and convoluted way to give you 10 to 13 examples of horror movies that you should consider watching this Halloween and why I enjoyed them. As I've mentioned before, hello Art the Clown, as I've mentioned before, I have done deeper and more extensive reviews of all of these over on my Letterboxd. I'm not trying to become a film bro. I just have a letterbox because my friend was doing it and I thought that was cool. So I jumped on the bandwagon. Hi Georgia, if you're watching this. When this video comes out, it should be before my next single comes out, which I'm releasing for Halloween. It's called Patchwork People. Check that out on the 25th of October, please. It's a horror story for Halloween. Follow my Instagram for all updates on what I'm doing. Become a member of my website for free, or sign up to the newsletter for free to also keep up to date with what I'm doing, but get exclusive stuff over there. If you like this video, then leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, because I will more than likely be back very soon with more videos talking about stuff in the most random and unhinged ways, which seems to be my vibe right now. I am Countess Victoria Lee. I love Halloween and horror films, and that was 13 recommendations, 10 recommendations as to what you should watch this Halloween. So if you do watch any of them, let me know down in the comments. And if you've made it this far, you should comment. Oh God, what should you comment? If you've made it this far in the video, you should comment down below TV Girl, to confuse everybody who hasn't made it this far. Because I think calling the girl from The Ring TV Girl is the height of comedy, the peak of comedy. That's my Halloween special. Done, dusted. I'm gonna go now, and I hope you enjoyed. And I hope that you stick around so we can see each other again for another video. Like a date, a cute date. Unless the men in white coats come and take me away. But I won't blame them. Come and visit me. Come and visit me when I'm thrown in Wokem Asylum. This feels like my villain origin story. Again. Right. I need to go, guys. Bye-bye. And cut.